Have you ever been to a party where they ran out of food or drinks? Jesus was at one, and what he did tells us a lot about his goodness. Today we're going to look at a story in the book of John about just such a party that Jesus went to. And we're going to look at this story to explore the topic of God's goodness. Let me read it first from the Message Bible. This is John 2. It says, 3 days later, there was a wedding in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples were guests also. When they started running low on wine at the wedding banquet, Jesus' mother told him, "They're just about out of wine." Jesus said, "Is that any of our business, Mother, yours or mine? This isn't my time. Don't push me." She went ahead anyway, telling the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." 6 stoneware water pots were there, used by the Jews for ritual washings. Each held 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus ordered the servants, "Fill the pots with water," and they filled them to the brim. "Now, fill your pitchers and take them to the host," Jesus said, and they did. When the host tasted the water that had become wine, he didn't know what had just happened, but the servants, of course, knew. He called out to the bridegroom, "Everybody I know begins with their finest wines, and after the guests have had their fill, brings in the cheap stuff. But you've saved the best till now." This act in Cana of Galilee was the first sign Jesus gave, the first glimpse of his glory, and his disciples believed in him. You might think this is a bit of an interesting story to use to talk about the goodness of God. But I love this story because of what it reveals about the heart of Jesus and about his goodness. You know, this story can be used to talk about so many things, but what I want to focus on here is just a couple things. The first is that Jesus took the water and he turned it into excellent wine. In that day, in that time, in that tradition, wine was representative of joyful celebration. And it was at every major feast. The feast could not happen without the wine. What is so interesting about this story is that Jesus did not just meet the need in that moment with just an average response, but he decided to meet it with an extravagant response. He made water into the most excellent wine that the host of the feast had ever tasted, so much so that he had to call the bridegroom and compliment him and also kind of question him, like, "What were you thinking? Why didn't you bring this out first? The guests have already drunk a lot. They're not going to notice how good this wine is." What does that say about the joyfulness, the goodness, the glad-heartedness of Jesus to make good wine? But I think another thing about this story that I want to really hone in on is the fact that Jesus did this in the first place and what it says about who he is. If you look a little bit into the traditions of Jewish culture, especially then, the wedding feast took place over days. And it was a statement not just of the joy of 2 people coming together in marriage, but it was a statement about the family throwing the wedding feast. If you ran out of wine at the wedding feast, that would bring immense shame upon the family. And even the couple who had just gotten married would go into their new life as a new married couple with a cloud of shame hanging over them. That is profound. And maybe something that in our Western culture, we don't really have as much of a way of relating to it. It would be really embarrassing if we ran out of food at a wedding today. But the shame, the cultural shame that would cover them, probably for the rest of their lives, and not just them, but their whole family, was profound. And Jesus, here's Jesus. He's just a guest at this wedding. He's not there officiating. He's not there leading. He's there partaking. And his mother shows up to him. I like to imagine that his mother was probably a good friend of the family of the wedding, and that she She kind of heard through the grapevine, maybe through the mother of the bridegroom, we are running out of wine. What are we going to do? The shame is going to be unbearable. And she runs to Jesus. And she, this Jewish mother, pushes Jesus and says, I know you know that you can do something about this. Jesus had not yet publicly shown his ability to do miracles. And he says to her, it's not really my time. But she doesn't even tell him, no, you do it anyway. She just goes to the servants and tells them, just do whatever he tells you to do. I know his heart, and I know that I can influence his heart. Jesus, his first act was an act of goodness to cover the shame, the potential shame that a family would have borne for months and years to come. Even though we may not relate to the traditions of that day, I think we can all relate to the experience of shame. The experience of shame is different than the experience of guilt. Guilt is the feeling of, I've done something that was not good. I know I'm good, but I've done something that was not good. Shame is the experience of, I am bad. I am not good. I am not worthy of love or acceptance or belonging because there's something fundamentally wrong with me. What Jesus demonstrates in his very first act was the act of a miracle to cover shame. I don't think it's any accident that it was wine. It was water that he turned into wine. Many months later, years later, we see a story where Jesus also uses wine. And he says, this wine is a symbol of my blood, which will be poured out for you. And that symbol is the symbol of what ultimately covers our shame, what has transformed us, what gives us the confidence to come into the goodness of the presence of God, knowing that we are accepted, we are loved, we belong, we are good because we have a good God, a good Savior who covers our shame, bears our shame. Today, I want to just invite you to notice where there might be spaces of shame in your own life that seem to keep you from experiencing the goodness of God. And I want to invite you to hear the message that Jesus comes to you in his goodness to transform shame into joy, to transform a place of feeling destitute into a place of abundance. Today, that promise is not just a promise for someone out there, it is a promise for you today. His goodness covers our shame. If you connected to this video or this topic, hit subscribe and you'll be notified every time we have a new video come out. Thanks for watching.